as I said, I got together with him for the first time at the draft, and he and I had a really good conversation. And I ran into him in Munich, and I ran into him with Vicky and Clyde over there actually, and
you don't just run into people in Munich.
Yeah, it was very affable, and so I know that I'm sure that right now, and he listens to all our podcasts, by the way, so I'm sure that he's not a great fan of this one today, this particular version, and so like at some point here, I talked to a player today that I know, it's kind of like I'm sort of like Craig Leopold made the rounds the other day. I mean, I started making the rounds today and calling players to just, kind of, because I also know that what Paul said to a couple players about after he was fired. And so I've been kind of calling those guys to just say, hey, I just want to make sure that you understand what really went down here. And I'll probably do the same thing with PJ and just make sure that, hey, if you want to continue to have a working relationship, I'm definitely, I respect you. I'm here. I got to cover. We got to work together, and hopefully that'll continue here.
All right, I'm going to throw the curveball question of the podcast. Given kind of the dysfunction you described and the fact that he was messing with lineups, he was messing with the team's momentum at times, is there any chance that if they hire the right general manager, he comes in, gets along with Bruce, Dumba's healthy, this team ends up looking a lot better than the team we thought we were watching last year?
Well, at this point, the team is the team. I can't think that any new GM is going to be able to change the lineup. So for them to all of a sudden get fixed, it's going to have to be great coaching and internal improvements by these guys and people put in the right spots, great health, things like that. So yes, it's going to take Dumba being back completely healthy. It's going to be Koivu being completely healthy. It's going to be taking, internal steps from guys like Greenway and Eriksson Ek and Donato and Fiala and Cunnin. And it's going to take bounce back years from guys like Stahl and Zucker. And so, but to me, it's still the same thing. Regardless right now who's running the team, are they as good as the other teams in this division? That's going to be the question. They have an unbelievable tough start to this season. I was booking hotels a couple days ago, and I just, again, could not believe how much, again, to get, I always bring it back to me, but I cannot believe how much I'm going to be on the road the first 2 months of the season. It's crazy. I mean, 13 of 18 games on the road to start the year, and I'm pretty positive I figured it out that I'm gone like 30 of 36, 7 or 8 days. I mean, that is tough for any hockey team, and so. This is not going to be an easy start to the season. So the one thing that I like talking to Boudreau a lot lately, the one thing that I think that I like is that Boudreau is, at least with Paul, made it very clear that he wants to get down to a real workable number right off the hop. They're doing a really cool thing in training camp, which I'm not positive I should say, but they're going to Colorado for 3 or 4 days, and so because of that, it's bookended by a couple exhibition games. They're basically probably only going to bring 28 guys. So right away, early in camp, whether they might keep some guys back here to work with coaches, but they're bringing essentially their team. And that hopefully will bond this team to a point that it could maybe kick them off here. But the one thing that Bruce is going to have to do is he's going to have to use these exhibition games. It can no longer be just a bunch of minor leaguers out there and just awful hockey. I mean, they've got to use the exhibition season to tune up, to start the season flying high, and he's got to figure out guys in proper roles. I mean, as we've talked about, it's not going to change suddenly. They are going to have 2 left shot guys on the right side that aren't natural right wings. And so, he's going to have to figure out who fits perfectly there. He's going to have to figure out who his power play units are, who his lines are. One thing on the power play, I mean, he might have to have a hard conversation with Koivu. I mean, there's a chance to start the season that the leading scorer in franchise history and the leading power play point producer in franchise history might not be on the power play. Because if Bruce Boudreau wants to have a right shot guy on that up front on that power play.
Speaking of,
sorry. Anyway, we could ask him
can he leave you alone for 1 minute?
Calls as much as my mother. If he wants to have a right shot guy in the middle on the power play, it's going to have to be Cunnin. Well, but again, if you're going to have Zucker, Fiala, and Donato on the power play, which I think you'd want to, I mean, you might have to have a really hard conversation with Mikko. That's one of the things I do want to talk to him about here lately is coming up here is what the heck's your power play unit's going to be and how you're going to figure it out. And, it's funny. I talk like this and I'm thinking to myself, God, I sound so stupid because I'm acting like they have Ovechkin, Backstrom, Oshie. but but if you really think about it, it's really hard to slot all these guys in the proper spots. And all of a sudden you are going to have guys that egos are going to get hurt. I mean, there's a chance if Mikko's on the power play that Cunnin and Greenway, two guys that you would want on the power play might not be on the power play. And then the other thing is that Greenway doesn't kill penalties, so you might have to really experiment there and try to figure out a way to get Greenway on the penalty kill if he's on the power play. Wow, look at that shirt, nice. Throwback. That's a throwback. Yeah.
I think that shirt earns you a question.
Yeah.
That's true. It's a Start Tribune shirt too.
Wow.
Someday you'll get.
I saw that.
Someday you'll get to work there again.
Yeah. I'd budgeted for another 3 months.
Actually, to give you a scoop, I definitely not someday soon because in the car I signed a new contract. So
wow.
So I will not be at the. I will be at the Athletic for some time.
10-day contract.
So, I mean, literally in the car as the Connors walked up. So,
Congratulations, Michael.
Yeah.
First of all, congrats on breaking a huge story and
thank you.
waiting 2 hours before anything else got out there. So I was happy for you as I was reading the article. But I guess my question is, so obviously Craig has been making calls to players. What's the role of Bruce Boudreau and really Koivu in this situation, just with all the tumult? How will they, or what is their role, or how do you see that playing out in terms of just bringing some stability to the situation?
I think, you're talking Mikko and Boudreau, not Leopold, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Mikko,
Thank you,
Mikko, my guess is, I know that Mikko's back in Finland. He's coming back pretty soon because his kids have to start school at the end of the month. But I'm sure other than the typical player text messages, which I would love to be privy to, I don't think that he's got a huge role right now. But when he gets back, I mean, I think that, Craig Leopold, Bruce Boudreau, and Paul Fenton are going to try to get with all these players to try to get them back together as a team, and I think Mikko's part of that. I've reported that Paul Fenton back in I think June had a conference call with Parise and Koivu and Suter about kind of, all right, we got to get back on track here, get everybody together, from a leadership standpoint and things like that. And I'm sure that'll continue. From Bruce's standpoint, I know that he's called a lot of players all summer long. Bruce has never missed the playoffs in his career, full season in the NHL. And so he's been miserable all offseason, absolutely miserable. And so he is trying to get his guys back again into a proper frame of mind. I'm sure that as these guys start to trickle back into town, Bruce is out of town for the next 9-10 days because he's doing his hockey school back at home in Ontario. But when he gets back here, I guarantee you he's going to start going to the Beauty League. I guarantee you he'll start going to Braemar to watch some of these informal skates. I guarantee you that he will, especially now that it looks like Zach Parise is 100% staying because there's no GM, that he will, after reading the story and seeing what Zach said the other day and seeing what Zach said at the end of the season, he's going to want to sit down, have lunch with Zach, and just work to get him into a proper positive frame of mind. And so that's kind of the role right now. It's more on Boudreau than Mikko. I mean, that's just a fact. So,
a couple of things I read in the last 24 hours. I think they were from Burnside, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think he said that he didn't think Fiala had any real chance of being a great player. And he also wrote that he thought Leopold should just back away from hockey decisions. Your thoughts on either or both of those?
On Fiala, look, it's way too young. We obviously have seen flashes of being a great player. I mean, when I watched him in that game in Nashville, I mean, that looked like a game breaker. And we just didn't see that enough. I've said it like a broken record, but my biggest concern, even at the time of the trade with Fiala, watching him in the many games I've covered between Minnesota and Nashville, is that I just saw a guy that looked like, a player that had a major injury. And it's funny, I was texting yesterday. It's unbelievable, by the way, when a story like that happens yesterday, the amount of text messages you get from people that you haven't heard from in a long time. not GMs and Danny Heatley and people like that. But Curtis Foster texted me, and so I started to think with Curtis equate that to Fiala. Curtis broke his femur, changed him as a player, obviously. And Kevin Fiala had a major injury, a broken femur, and I don't think his break was quite exactly like Curtis's. Curtis was absolutely devastating. And Fiala's, I don't think, was as severe, but regardless, it's a broken freaking femur. And I think that when we watch Kevin Fiala play and watch him turn the puck over as much as he does, that to me is a sign of somebody that's like, oh my God, I don't want to freaking get hit in the corner right now. And I think that's because of that injury. And that was my concern at the time. And I think if that doesn't stop, if he doesn't take care of the puck better, he just cannot be the player that Paul Fenton thought he was going to be. And I think a lot of times when you draft people, you look at them with scout's eyes forever. You see it. I mean, like all GMs, I mean, Paul has the people that he really loves. I mean, if you talk to Paul Fenton, when you talk to him about people like Freddie Gaudreau or Patrick Hornquist or Kevin Fiala, people that he drafted, he feels incredible ownership of them. He wants them to succeed because it was his decision. And I think that's why he gets so singularly focused with Fiala. Was there another part of your question?
He also thought he thinks that Leopold should step away from hockey decisions.
Oh, I mean, again, look, Craig, this is his full-time job. He normally is not, I mean, he doesn't sit there and do it or not do it. If he did say do it or not do it, I would hope that he would have stopped a couple of these moves this year. Especially the Niederreiter for Rask one. So it's more like it's from a budget standpoint. It's like, all right, how's the money going to work and blah, 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 blah. The one thing we haven't talked about, not to change the subject, is we haven't talked about potential replacements for Paul Fenton, I don't think. Have we?
That was my next on my list. In fact, before we get to that, and you are changing the subject, since we have just a few minutes left, if you want to get your question in, get up here next 5 minutes or so. There we go.
Yeah.
I also want to thank our sponsors, Tin Shed in Savage. Their website, if you want to check out their menu, and all they have to offer is tinshedmn.com. Highly recommend this place. I have friends in Savage who come here all the time. We appreciate all of you coming down to this. Twill in the Dining Galleria, everything from casual to really nice stuff, from head to toe. I wear their stuff all the time. I love it. Fixology Repair, John Hedges' shop. Remember the new shop over in St. Paul now. Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent Champlin. And remember to order from Bitesquad, whether or not you've already done so. So there we go.
So I have a couple questions. So one, you mentioned having a hockey guy in the interview process. Mm-hmm. Is there a reason like Boudreau's not part of that?
Good question. Well, one, he's out of town. Although I think he's told Craig, if you need me, I'm back. I'll leave my school type thing. But my guess is just I don't know. I don't have a great question for that, other than I think that it would be awkward to take a coach that's in the last year of his deal and put him in the hiring process of a potential next GM that could be here for 10 years, that type of thing. And so that would be my only real good answer to that. It just would be extremely awkward. I've never in my life heard of a GM being interviewed where the coach of the team is going to be in there with the owner. I mean, that just, there's got to be a hierarchy, and all of a sudden it kind of paints this picture of the new GM, like, what the hell? Like, it would create an awkward thing. My mother, as I was driving here, was like, "You think Craig will have you in the interviews and ask questions?" And I'm like, I think that'd be a conflict of interest. I really do.
It's not a bad idea, though.
No, it isn't a bad idea. I've offered that. I said Craig a list of names. I won't lie about that. So,
well, I would say you and I would have done a better job hiring the last GM, and that's with me contributing.
Well, but it's like it's funny because what we say, we kind of like rail on Craig because he hired the guy that he knew, but I would have done the same thing. Like Tom Fitzgerald would have been the guy. Like
yeah, but you wouldn't have hired somebody who would have acted like Paul Fenton.
Yeah, but it would have been the same thing. It was like I would have had Tom as my first interview, then interviewed a bunch of other people, then I just would have hired Tom that we all knew all along I was going to hire Tom. So anyway,
so my next question is. They want to get this hired quickly, is what it sounds like to me, but that really worries me. And so, is there a reason that they wouldn't just let Tom Curvers take over for the year and then?
Well, I mean,
revisit his
you know,
next season?
I will say I don't think he's a candidate. You know, he's dealing with a health issue right now
Thank you.
that does preclude him. You know, he's got to get treatments. It does preclude him from traveling.